specific to a 1981 Cj5 Jeep with stock front hub and rotors. We're going to tear it down on the driver's side wheel and put it back on with new bearings. In this video, same as the rest of my old school mechanic ones, I've laid out all the important information on the upper 2/3 of the screen. Part numbers, special instructions, diagrams, and so forth. It's my intentions that you'll cruise through this video and then return to the details you need and pause to read it. YouTube typically covers the bottom of the screen with stuff when you pause a video. So if you're using this video as a reference while actually doing the work, the needed info will not be covered when you're looking at a paused screen. We're starting with the brakes already removed, and the Jeep is up on a jack stand with the hub and rotor ready to be taken off. Start with removing the locking hub cover and removing the snap ring you'll find underneath. Depending on your hub type, either Allen wrenches or a torque driver will be needed, and an external type of snap ring pliers. 9/16 tools are needed to remove the locking hub base. Take time to inspect it, and later on I'm going to explain how important it is for this to be in good shape. Removing the outer lock nut needs a special spindle socket, and it's usually hard to find in a store, so as myself, you'll probably end up ordering it online. The locking washer is the next to be removed. You should find it bent over the inner lock nut that's behind it, and it holds this nut in place. This time around, I was able to straighten it back, and we'll be able to reuse it. Now it's time to remove the inner lock nut. It should be very loose and easy to turn. If not, it should only be barely hand tight. Under that nut is the bearing washer. It usually is stuck to the bearing with a grease, but if you slide it and the bearing to the end of the threads, and the hub will come off real easy. Now first we need to take out the outer bearings and the bearing washer. They're going to fall out anyway when you flip it over to work on the inner side, so let's get them out now. Let's flip the hub over and take out the inner seal. Take your time doing it and pull it out from behind the rubber part, and typically you'll be able to reuse it. Generally speaking, unless the inner bearing is completely worn out and allows the hub to ride up onto the spindle under the weight of the vehicle, the seal doesn't wear very much at all. Now go ahead and pull the inner bearing out, and it's time now to clean all the grease out of the hub. This is why the repairs were done this time. You'll notice that the outer bearing race is worn, and you can see where the rollers were running hot and grooved the race. This next slide, you'll be the one that you'll probably need to come back to and pause it to be able to get all the part numbers. Tamken has sets that will include both the races and the bearings together, and you don't have to buy the two separate, even though they're offered separate. I'm voicing over some of this next segment because of a shop fan making a lot of noise. Uh, you'll see the inner seal, it rides on a shoulder on the back of the spindle. Then the inner bearing will ride against that same shoulder. Now it can slide back and forth a little bit, but it'll stop on that shoulder pushing backwards. The outer bearings need to slide back and forth also. And there is a very small shoulder that they'll stop on also, but they need to slide back and forth for us to be able to make our adjustments, even though how small the adjustments are. Now, the next bearing washer comes into play because it allows the inner lock nut to slide against it while pushing on the bearing instead of the lock nut actually pushing the bearing itself. Next going on is the locking washer. It's next. The tab can point either way, inward or outward in the spindle groove. This washer allows the inner nut to stay in place and not get rotated by the outer nut when we're torquing it. Now I'll start talking about bending the washer. Bend these down right here over these flats. Once we set this where we need to be back here, this is going to hold it in tight. Yeah. This is normal. This locks it in. This is going to ride over that. And it's going to center this shaft. Now you see this shaft, this is normal. And you don't want any movement here, side to side. So, because it's going to hold its center. Now, this would make it wear it out on the inside. And this is going to hold it center. Okay, back on the bench with the outer side up. Notice in this close-up, the two open slots in the cast iron inside the center of the hub. And this is where the races are pressed against these shoulders. These open slots are exposing the back side of the race. You'll see there that this is where we're going to drive the race out with a punch and a hammer, and it's going to be easy. to start with the reassembly, and we're going to be pressing the bearings into the hub. I'll say in the beginning here that if you have some time to kill, you can put bearing races in your freezer. Pull them out the next day and they will almost fall into the hub. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you the old school way of installing them at room temperature without a hydraulic press. The typical bearing seal drivers kits will be made out of aluminum, and there'll be no damage to the races from the aluminum, no matter how hard you're hitting at it, and the aluminum will take the dents and not the races. And you'll see here, as I've showed you, they're contoured to fit tapered races and seals and everything else, and it's a good kit to have and put on hand in your garage. So now just flip the hub over and install the races on the other side. You're not going to mess up because the bearings are not the same size. The inner races are larger and they will only fit on the side that they belong in. Now it's time to prep the inner seal with and the spindle shoulder where the seal is going to run on with O-ring grease. There's a lot of products on the market, but I'm using what I have on hand in the garage. Now, as it comes to the type of grease to pack the bearings with, be sure and look for that number 2 beside the model numbers that come on the grease cans. Um, no matter what type you use, they're going to have that number or not. And it is recommended for ball and roller type bearings to use a grade 2 grease. The most important thing for me to tell you in this whole video is to make sure that the bearings are completely solid with grease throughout and around all the rollers. The reason I've shown installing the inner bearings first is to be able to handle the hub without the bearings falling back out of it. And the installed inner seal will prevent this. Even getting it put onto the vehicle, to me, would be almost impossible without the inner seal being already on it to get everything slide in. The flat side of the tapered aluminum drivers are generally the side to press the seals with. And try to start the seal in by hand or get the edges into its slot, uh, and start off slow tapping it because the seal's metal backing ring is thin metal, and it'll bend pretty easy, and we want a good install. We're almost through with the bench work. Uh, Install the outer bearings, and a helpful hint is to use your thumbs to hold the bearing in place, carry it outside, and slide it onto the spindle without a problem. Now install the bearing washer and the inner lock nut right behind it. You can find just about anything on the internet, and that's what I did. I found this manual and I listed across the top of the screen its instructions on how to do what we're doing back in the day when they did it. We need to get the rollers squeezed down onto the races for the first time and get the grease out of the way so that our adjustments are correct. So we're going to put 50 pounds of torque on that inner lock nut, and this will help seat the rollers on their races. Okay, this sounds a lot more complicated than it really is. But take a look inside at where the inner nut is located in relation to the spindle slot's groove. Now, even mark it with a pin if you have to, put a dot on one of the flats. Um, what's going to happen is by the time you break this thing free from its 50 pounds of torque, it's going to spin over there a little bit faster than you want it to till you get a grip on your own strength and make the thing stop. So now you're going to have to come back and probably locate that loose inner nut at its 1/6 turn location that they're asking for. And it's going to be easier than you think, even though it sounds complicated. But soon as you've got it in position, now that means that that nut is going to be loose. You'll be able just to spin it with your hand, but get it on a place at a what would be equivalent to 1/6 of a turn from its location at its torqued position, and load up the locking washer and put the outer nut on top of all this and torque the outer nut to the 50 pounds. Okay, now we're at step number 4. Rotate the wheel and try to feel for the side to side movement. There's probably about a 50% chance you're not going to feel it. It never has for me on the first try. And your drag, you'll see that it's dragging a little bit. You also won't feel any side to side movement. Now, what happens is you're going to have to repeat what you just did and simply break the lock nut free, take it off, take the locking washer off so you can get to that nut that's on the inner bearing. And now rotate that one more flat, looser. And now you're going to put everything back together, locking washer and then the outer lock nut, and you're going to torque that outer lock nut again to 50 foot-pounds. And I've got a little experience suggestion for you there. If you end up having to do this a third time, then I would only rotate the inner nut about a half a flat or about an eighth of a turn. If you go a full flat, you'll end up with more side to side movement than you'll be comfortable with. And so let's go after it. Well, if you've made it to step 5, then 1, you can barely feel a little bit of side bearing looseness. There's going to be very little drag on the wheel when you spin it, and the outer nut is sitting there at 50 pounds of torque. So now it's time to put the rest of the stuff together and get the axle locker back on. But stick around just a little longer because I'm going to show you a couple of old school tricks to get that done with a big old pry bar. After you've bent that locking washer over and it was holding the inner lock nut in place, screw on a lug nut to protect your threads, and slide a big pry bar in underneath the hub and brace it to the ground. Now this is going to make your life a whole lot easier when you're trying to torque your locker base hub at about 30 pounds of torque without that thing spinning around and trying to hold it one way while you're torquing the other way and stuff like that. It leaves it in position for you. And when you get through doing that, slide that pry bar back in there behind the yoke and the axle to the axle frame in there, and just push it out, and you'll have plenty of time and plenty of room to get your snap ring back in without hassling with that and trying to be hold it at the same time and all that stuff. Just get a big pry bar.